and there's still time for them to change it again.
All righty. Good morning, Commissioners, and over to you, Chair Harrington.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Thursday, October 2nd. If you're anything like me or trying to adjust to the fact that it is indeed Thursday of this week, and also we're in the month of October already. So Shazam, here we are. We have a very full day today, and we're going to pick back up with a work session topic on library, WCCLS library and governance. So I'd like to welcome up to the table our experts in the whole library domain. Oh, I forgot to mention that we have a full complement of commissioners today. This is the voice of Vice Chair Catherine Harrington. Oh, excuse me. You wrote Chair Catherine Harrington. See what I get for the caffeine free. Chair Catherine Harrington, Vice Chair Commissioner Pam Trees, Commissioner Jerry Willey, Commissioner Nafisa Faye, Commissioner Jerry Snyder, Jason Snyder. I'm really on a roll.
Somebody get her some coffee.
Thank you for all being good sports while my brain and my mouth get in sync with one another. So we better go to no, thanks. I have some upstairs. Without further ado, let's go into libraries before I say something else that's rather silly.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Chair Harrington and Board. For the record, I'm Marnie Kyle. I'm one of the Assistant County Administrators and lucky enough to have WCCLS in my portfolio. I'm here today with Lisa Tattersall, the WCCLS Manager, and we have Erin Wardell and Jordan Henderson in the audience today in case there's any questions about maps, boundaries, or funding formula. Speaking of Erin, I want to say a huge thank you to Erin and her team, who are now official members of WCCLS. Yes, we really appreciate her and her team, and I am learning they are true map artists. Yes. Our intention today is to answer questions and concerns that were raised by your board last week at the September 23rd work session. Our hope is to receive clear direction from your board on the questions that I'm going to mention in a second so that we can bring back an action item to your board next week. At the end of the presentation, the questions that we would like to have your board discuss are, and these are on a slide at the end, so you don't have to remember them. So the questions are, do you have any further inputs for the funding methodology? Do you want to keep Aloha and Forest Grove at the same rate of potential increase as the rest of the partners, so the 4.25%? Does your board wish to adjust the library boundaries to reflect UPAA considerations? And do you direct staff to use an implementation strategy that would maintain the funding allocation without reducing Beaverton and Cedar Mills base starting in 2026? And we will go through and talk more about that and why that is a possible implementation strategy. And then does your board agree to adding future annexation considerations into the IGA, as well as requiring Forest Grove and Aloha to provide ramp up plans as part of the IGA or an MOU? And with that, I will turn it right over to Lisa to get to the questions and the meat of the matter.
You want to do something?
Sure.
So good morning. Just a quick quick overview of the topics we're going to go through today. So just a very brief process review from last week, but real fast. And then we're going to talk about service population and allocation methodologies. We're going to talk about fund balance, allocation increases, and accountability. Last but not least, second from last, we're going to talk about service boundaries and mapping considerations. And then we'll talk about draft mayor communication. Okay, so this is all from last week. So I'm not going to go through as much detail as I did last week, but I think the thing we wanted to highlight on this timeline slide was just the goal to get proposed allocation amounts to cities in December for their budget planning purposes and for our budget planning purposes. And just as a reminder for our community members who are listening, our current levy and current IGAs expire in June of 2026. And so we are going to be wanting to work on those IGAs pretty soon so that we can get those signed by June in order to support the new allocations that would start in July with the new revenue should voters approve the levy. I think the thing I want to just highlight here from last time is just that one of the concerns or that our partners raised in 2021 with the current funding methodology that we are using is that it tended to create a feedback loop that would reward. Is it doing it? It's doing it again. Okay. That would reward libraries that were better funded, and it created a disparity in the level of investment made across partner communities. And so this is something that we are hoping to address in the current model. The previous formula was based on checkouts. Sorry, I'm going to go back to that. And as staff have shared before, using checkout metrics and foot traffic to drive funding allocation does tend to reward communities that have higher levels of educational attainment, literacy skills, English language skills, leisure time for reading, things like that. Communities who use libraries in less traditional ways, often due to lower rates of educational attainment and language or literacy skills, tend to receive less funding in this. As a result of this feedback and concern from some of our partners and communities, and in line with the board's direction to evaluate the library funding formula using consistent data sets and community information, we included a commitment in our current IGA to conduct stakeholder engagement and analyze cooperative structure and funding as we lead up to this levy cycle. And this slide just has that language on the slide.
I'll just interject a quick mention here that I appreciate the fact that in each of these slides thus far, the word cooperative is highlighted. This is unique in our whole Washington County-wide system, and it's been a very meaningful work to me in terms of coming to agreement amongst partners. Thank you.
And then just for your board's reference and for the public, just a links and dates for all of the board touch points on this process. Last thing I want to share from last week is just the board supported process goals, which were to establish a common understanding of current service levels and total costs, establish base library service levels available for all county residents, evaluate and refine partner roles in providing base level service to the community, identify options for funding base levels library services, and establishing metrics to allocate funding for partners operating libraries. And all of that is why we are here today. All right. So there was some really great discussion last week around sort of all of the different ways we could think about how we allocate library funding, and we can really evaluate it through so many lenses, and any lens we choose has really different impacts for each partner and for the system. And so when we're talking about a board goal and a process goal of base library services for all county residents, it is important to keep that in mind as we're choosing the lens that we look through for allocation. As a group, the partners did look at other ways to allocate funds, including service metrics, but we did look at, sticking with what we have with the adjustments that were made under your board's direction in terms of holding partners harmless and things like that. Go to the next slide. As Marina and Company is our consulting firm for this project, they did research for the work, and as part of that, they interviewed staff at the State Library of Oregon as we started looking at service boundary methodologies and funding allocation methodologies. The State Library there are OARs on, excuse me, related to libraries. And so we wanted to make sure we were, in line with that, and also to get their thoughts on best practices. And so I just wanted to highlight, I do have attached an email to the packet from the state library that just talks about how they do not consider it a best practice to integrate usage metrics when you're determining service populations or funding. And that's really because, among other things, it does exacerbate existing inequities in systems of service. Population.
I think the question, Jason, on the population, at least from my standpoint, has been that this is a kind of a relatively new guideline that I think, and I think it's a good one. But does the model take into consideration that we have 220,000 people that don't live in cities? And I think that messes up that rigid formula of population in cities and those kinds of things. So I've been taking that into consideration and evaluating this as far as
So one of the things that I know Commissioner Leo had questions about, sort of the before and after the current and proposed service population counts. And so one of the things that is I think important to highlight is the weaknesses of the current method that we are using to calculate population. It is a legacy method. It's not good, and I was so excited to be able to update with a rational approach to creating service boundaries and service populations, because libraries have been stuck with this really outdated method. And so what we have been doing, and so when you look at the current service population column, that's how these numbers are derived. This is what I'm going to walk through now. So the service boundaries were drawn about 10 years ago. There was a consultant that WCCLS worked with at the time, but we don't have any specific methodology captured from that time as to how that happened. At the time, those population counts for each library were accurate within the boundaries. But what we found is that over time, the population counts have been drifting further and further from actual numbers, and I'll explain why. And that's because we didn't have a mechanism to actually count the accurate number of people within each boundary. And so what we did, which again, I'm not saying this is good, but we took the annual growth in county population and applied that evenly to all partners based on the percentage of the total population they initially received or represented. And so this method really doesn't reflect any of the on-the-ground reality of development, changes in density, changes in growth rates. And so this is an important thing to keep in mind when looking at current and proposed population counts, that the current are a very best guess at best. And so it's exciting to be able to have a mechanism to have updated data going forward. It's also really helpful for our libraries from an operational perspective, just for applying for grants and things like that, to have accurate, as well as operational planning to have those accurate counts. Another question that came up kind of in different ways from many folks was just talking, what is the relationship between population and funding in the methodology? And so I wanted to highlight that here. And so the first input into the allocation is the service population. And those are banded into increments of 2,500. And that was from a slide from last week. And so I think that it's important to remember that so per these increments of 2,500 FTE are applied. And so when we look at the service boundaries later and we talk about the proposed map adjustments, you'll see that some libraries wouldn't receive any potential change in allocation, and that's because of this tolerance of 2,500 when we're looking at the population. Then we would take 4.5 FTE per every 10,000 of population and apply that to the service population. An analysis of the cooperative library staffing data shows that there's a linear correlation between FTE and population, and that 4.5 is that line. And this does largely just align with also Marina looked at state data and national data, and this feels in line with that. Then we looked at how much funding would be applied per FTE. And so we looked at $128,000 per FTE unit. That is the average of city library costs per FTE. That does not include the average of the nonprofit costs. I do have on this slide a little chart that shows the dollars per FTE, cost per FTE for each partner, so you can compare. The little stars are just noting which ones are the cities, and that's what the average is calculated from. This is based on actual data from 23-24, which was the last year of actuals that we had. And then Marina escalated it by 6% per year to get to a forecasted amount for fiscal year 26-27, which is the first year of the levy. And that's what gets us to the 128,000. And the 6% came from, that's the average. When they look at actual costs, that's the average escalation rate in costs over time for the cooperative. I'm going to pause here because I've thrown a lot of numbers at you.
When you're looking, so just to be clear, if you're trying to take the 128,000 and apply it to the table that is right next to it, like not a single number is above 128,000. So that's because it's multiple years. I'm checking this because it's multiple years back.
Yes.
It needs to be inflated, and we're also projecting for the time of the levy.
Correct.
Okay. Because the way it's sitting there looking,
Yeah.
you know,
I was like, how is that an average?
you don't have to have been through even 5th grade math to figure that out.
Yep.
That's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So we took the average from 23-24 actuals and then inflated it.
Well, I think the other thing needs to be pointed out is that the nonprofits don't have the same pay scale as the cities, and so the nonprofits actually would benefit more from money.
Yes. Yeah, and I think the other thing to note, I think is also just clear from this slide is just how different libraries' operational choices and staffing choices, how they choose to staff, which classifications they use, whether they use more full-time or part-time staff. All of that really impacts their average cost per FTE quite a bit. Another common question that has come up with your board and in one-on-ones is around how do we know which people use which libraries? And we have some data and we have some anecdata, and then there's stuff we just don't know. And so what we do have data on is that of library users that live 0 to 5 minutes away from a library, 75% of their checkouts are made at that library. That's within that proximity. And so I don't have the slide from last week, but we saw that slide where increasing proximity results in higher checkouts. The further you are away, the less you're checking out from that library. We also know that 53% of users in our system checked out an item at more than one branch last fiscal year. So that's a data that kind of backs up our anecdata that when we're in the community talking to folks, we do hear that people like to library hop and use libraries for different things. That's one of the benefits of our cooperative system. And that speaks to the next point on the slide is that anecdotally, we know that users prefer different libraries and amenities depending on their preference, their unique needs as an individual or a family, even their plans for that day. I know Commissioner Bai, you were talking about that last week about how sometimes you go to Beaverton because it fits better. Sometimes you go to Aloha because it makes more sense for what your speed is that day. And so I think that's a really common thing that we hear from library users. But beyond this.
Or Bethany, I would say, because it's got a lot of good amenities.
Excellent. Bethany is a great library. So I think beyond this information, staff cannot confidently say that residents of an area are more or less likely to visit a particular library. We can guess, but we can't say for sure for the purposes of funding allocations.
Proximity is clearly a strong factor.
Proximity is the strongest factor that we see in the data. Okay, here's another chart with a lot of information. So I'm going to orient you. This is a new one. So the purpose of this chart is comparing the percentage share of each partner for different metrics. And so these are all percentages of the total, what each partner represents as a percent of the total. So the black outline is the percentage of the proposed allocation. The yellow bar is the percentage of physical checkouts from July 2022 to June 2025. Red bar is the percentage of library visits or foot traffic in the last fiscal year, and then blue is the percentage of the total proposed population. And the one disclaimer I
Service area.
in the new service area, the one disclaimer though is that this does not reflect the proposed boundary changes that are coming up later in the session. So I just want to be clear about that.
And this is the percentage of those within the 10-minute radius.
No, this is each library partner, what percent of usage they represent.
Oh, okay.
So this is not people, it's libraries.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Jordan. The blue bar. Oh, thank you. The blue bar is people. It represents service counts. So, for example, banks represents X percent of the total service population of the county. Yeah.
Thank you. Now I do get it.
Okay.
And that's why Aloha is higher.
Right. Yep.
And in converse, you look at Beaverton, the percentage of checkouts, physical checkouts, as compared to the population. So it would seem like they are exceeding their service amenities. No, I'm looking. Well, I just looked at Beaverton as the first one. Hillsboro's the same thing, but anyway, it's a very interesting, informative graph. So lots of information here.
Those aren't necessarily, is that a unique one checkout or is it
It is the
amount of material? So if I take out 5 books versus 1 book,
it is the number of checkouts. It's
no matter how
a
many
checkout or
materials
no matter how many.
materials are in.
No, sorry, it is the number of materials. So
Okay.
if Beaverton had 3 people that checked out a lot of books, that would show up there. Or if they had 300,000 people that checked out 1 book, it would be the same number. So, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so if
It's material.
Materials, not unique use.
The answer to your question, Jason, is 5.
you go there and do 15 books at a time,
And that's the way city councilors
They might be checking out.
in prior cycles used to just encourage people to go to the library and just check out books even if they didn't read them because of the formula working on checkout material.
But with that, is that influenced by, I look back on personal history. When you have kids, you check out
Mhm.
the stack. So I would guess it might be influenced by the activity in the children's area.
Yep. And kids' books are definitely a big driver of physical circulation, especially in recent years where we're seeing more and more adults move to digital.
So Jason, just to go back to your one person checking out 5, if you look at the Beaverton column, they have a lot of physical checkouts as compared. They have more physical checkouts than they have actual visits. But if you look at Hillsboro, they actually have more visits than they have checkouts.
Well, I
That's an
also wonder
interesting service.
where is the count? At which door, right? Because if you go into one of the meeting rooms that is internal to the library, are you counted as a visitor even though you're not there for books? You're there for a meeting.
That is correct. So if you walk into the building to use the restroom, or you walk in the building to spend all day there working at your remote job, or you walk into the building to check out 50 picture books, each of those activities counts as one visit. So the libraries have their gates that count foot traffic, not population. They count foot traffic at their main front entrances. So,
Which can also make sense because they're utilizing the library building service.
absolutely,
Yes.
and we're agnostic in terms of the purposes that people are going into buildings.
Yep.
Libraries are there
Center.
for many.
But I think this discussion also points to why it's so difficult to rely on service metrics as a driving factor for the funding formula.
Okay. And then this slide has the same information as the previous slide, but we've added a green bar, and the green bar shows the property tax generated by each region. And because of that, addition of that data, we've had to lump the unincorporated area libraries together because they aren't discrete cities that we can count that for. So
Now,
This is again using the methodology that was in place last week for
correct.
and this is WCCLS property taxes.
Correct.
I think because I'm hearing different things from different city councilors. So it's WCCLS property tax.
It's the property taxes, generated
Levy.
library. Yep. It's the levy and also it's a proportion of what WCCLS gets from the general fund transfer.
both of
Both of those, It's the permanent rate and the levy.
So when cities make a statement that says we're not getting what our residents put in, then that's not accurate.
Depending on the statement of the city and
So for example,
Right.
if, I guess the city of Hillsborough, the green bar is high,
Mhm.
city of Beaverton is not.
Yeah, the comparison would be the green bar to the
The
blue.
green bar. So, this is really helpful.
Those bars are also from that prior chart that we had on what was it, the 16th or the 9th?
Right.
we have,
September 16th.
and on the next slides, I have more detailed on the property tax as well. And so we don't need to belabor this, but just making it available because I know this was a request. So this is for the current fiscal year estimated property tax revenue and budgeted allocation. I would like to actually just say some of these disclaimers out loud because I think they're important context. And so one is this doesn't reflect the boundary changes that we'll talk about later. The data is estimated. It does not take compression into account or urban renewal areas. It assumes a 96% collection rate and a 0.5% return for delinquent taxes. Yep. And then the other big disclaimer here is that the unincorporated area tax generated amount, that represents taxes from the whole unincorporated area, whereas the allocation just speaks to the funding for Aloha, Cedar Mill, Bethany, Garden Home, West Slope. Those are specific areas. So just wanted to highlight that. And then the same thing just projected for fiscal year 26-27. So the previous slide was the current budgeted allocation, and then this slide would be the proposed. So you can see the difference.
And for clarity, other cities, we have portions of Wilsonville, a tiny portion of Lake Oswego, and city of Portland, all at least within our boundary, plus a little bit of Gaston too.
Gaston, Kingsley. Yep.
Oh,
Exactly. So those are just any cities that don't have a library that receives funding. Okay. Now we're moving on to other topics. So Commissioner Willie, you had brought up last week, what would it look like if each library received the same potential rate of increase? So if Aloha and Forest Grove also received a 4.25% increase rather than a ramp up increase. And so this table is forecasting that. And so you could see the amount each library would get. I also want to highlight again, just for the record and for the community members listening, that this table is a forecast of a model. It assumes 4.25% AB growth. It also assumes a consistent allocation from the general fund across 5 years. And the general fund allocation, the general fund transfer is determined by your board through an annual budget process. So just wanted to say that out loud. This also does not reflect the proposed boundary changes coming up in the later slides. The thing I want to draw your attention to is at the very bottom where you can see the delta. So by adjusting these percentage increases, those are that's the change over the 5-year cycle, assuming these assumptions. And then the next slide shows, the same information, just in a different view. And so shows the same assumption of the same rate of potential increase for every partner. It shows the county general fund, again, that assumption of a stable general fund transfer. It shows the assumption of a library levy being supported at the 37-cent rate. And then the blue area at the back is showing the total cost. So you're seeing the revenue and the cost line up there.
Once again, a forecast.
It's very much a forecast. Yeah.
Some of our city councilors are not reading them as forecasts. That's why I'm verbally saying forecast.
And then this is the last.
Based upon my discussions with them, to be clear.
This last chart shows, again, the same assumption of that 4.25 increase for all partners. And this would be what the impact on the fund balance would be as a projection. And so it would be the fund balance is the blue bar, and then the green line is the 3 months of operational expenditures. Okay. This slide talks about, I know that's something we've heard from your board around the accountability for those ramp up partners who would be receiving quite a bit more. And so that would be Aloha and Forest Grove. They were designated as ramp up partners because of that, that need to increase funding over time to address that previous underinvestment. And so staff, what we're proposing is to work with these partners to craft specific memoranda of agreements to support prudent and thoughtful spending, to support investment in operations, sustainability, and services. These principles in the MOAs would return to your board along with the IGA principles. And the reason we're thinking of having them separate is just they would be specific per partner, whereas the IGAs would be consistent across the system. Okay, now we're getting into the colorful maps. So I wanted to just provide a brief sort of history of the methodology that we were using. So the initial approach was to use voter precincts as a base unit for the boundaries. And the reason was that they're less granular than census blocks, but they're more granular than census tracts. And they also align with current city boundaries. And this was a helpful level of analysis because we were working with partners to work through those conflicted and shared precincts. And I forget how many, if we had used blocks, how many were there that over 7? Yeah. And so like it was just a hard thing to wrangle when you're working with partners to figure out how are we going to serve these areas if we're at that granular level. However, I think so it worked well for that and coming to that mutual agreement with partners. But the approach also created some mapping challenges when we overlay urban planning area agreements or UPAAs into that consideration. And so at the work session last week, the chair, you asked us to overlay that UPAA map on the service boundaries to see these potential issues. And so these following maps reflect your direction. And we're going to go through them now. So Erin's team made a beautiful version of the map you all saw in briefings, but formatted for a PowerPoint slide, which is lovely. And I'll just orient you to this. So and Erin, please jump in if I get anything wrong.
CN 11 by 7. Pass this around.
Thank you. So the sort of halo, fuzzy kind of colorful lines represent the proposed library service boundaries. I'll just use Hillsborough as the example because they're in the middle of the map. So the halo, green halo for Hillsborough is their service area for the library. The light green represents their city boundaries that are currently in place. The darker shading represents what is in their urban planning area agreement. And so, and I'm going to try and say this, it is the mutually agreed upon between the county and the city for future development and expansion and incorporation. Okay. And so that's what we've got. And then all of the nonprofit unincorporated areas are purple. Yeah. And the next few slides, we just zoom into a few specific areas where we saw some anomalies. So the first proposed adjustment, just calling A, it is currently an unincorporated area adjacent to the city of Hillsborough. It's currently assigned to Cedar Mill. So you see that little green crescent on the other side of the purple. And so what's proposed is to assign that to Hillsborough because it's within the Hillsborough UPAA. The population impact would be 73 people from Cedar Mill to Hillsborough. And as we go through this, I just want to reiterate again that our recommendation is that this would not impact funding allocations, but that would be up to your board. Next slide. Okay, this has two adjustments on it. Adjustment B, it's an unincorporated area adjacent to the city of Beaverton. It is currently assigned to Cedar Mill based on the proximity analysis. And so the proposal would be to assign it to Beaverton because it is within the Beaverton UPAA. The population impact is it would allocate 1,033 people from Cedar Mill to Beaverton. Adjustment C, which is just below that, it's an unincorporated area adjacent to the city of Beaverton. It's currently assigned to Aloha, again, for the proximity analysis. The proposal is to assign it to Beaverton because it's within the Beaverton UPAA, and the impact is 2,738 people from Aloha to Beaverton. Adjustment D is highlighted there. That's the River Terrace 2.0 area. It is currently unincorporated, but it was brought into the Metro UGB in 2022 by the request of the city of Tigard, and the city is preparing a comprehensive plan for that area. The proposal would be to assign it to Tigard because it is within the Tigard UPAA. It is currently assigned to the city of Beaverton, and so that would impact 43 people from Beaverton to Tigard. All right, adjustment E, this is an interesting one. It is a couple of little islands and then a peninsula is how I'm talking about. It is unincorporated areas in the Tigard UPAA. They were assigned to Beaverton because of the proximity to Murray Shoals, and they are also within one voter precinct. So I think this is where the voter precinct approach created a weird kind of thing in the map. And so the proposal would be to assign those areas to Tigard because they are all within the Tigard UPAA. The population impact would be allocating 5,600 people from Beaverton to Tigard.
Garden home area?
No.
That's like full.
West side of Beaumont, west and north side of Beaumont.
Oh, okay. I was looking at.
And when you think about it, so the cities use bulk mailing just like we do with the voters pamphlet. And so a lot of these people are used to getting the cards from Beaverton because of the way mail works. Yeah.
Let's make it really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Postal Service.
Yeah. All right, and this is the last proposed map adjustment, F, and it's an unincorporated area in the Tualatin UPAA, so you can see it's shaded blue, light blue, but it's in currently the city of Sherwood boundary for library service. The proposal would be to assign it to Tualatin because it's in the Tualatin UPAA, and that's 24 people in that population.
Follows our strategic plan too.
This chart shows the allocation implications of these boundary adjustments if you apply the methodology that we have purely. So I think staff's recommendation is that we do not reduce funding for partners because of these boundary changes, and I'll explain a little bit why. But so on the left, you can see each partner that's impacted by these adjustments. The next column shows the net change in population across all of the adjustments for each partner. And then the last column shows the net change in their allocation if we follow the formula. And so for Beaverton and Cedar Mill, the net change would be a reduction of 144,000. For Tigard, it would be an increase of 17,000. For Aloha, we put a net change of 0 because their allocation was already reduced due to being a ramp-up partner. But again, as you can see from the math too, that we're not, we don't need to reduce Beaverton and Cedar Mill by 144 in order to allocate elsewhere. And so that's why our recommendation is to hold them harmless. And the reason,
I don't understand that yet.
And I as well don't understand why the net change when you're adding 5,700 is 17,000 versus when you're reducing it 144. I'm lost.
Yes, this is confusing, and the reason is can we go back to that slide that had the formula stuff and we talked about the tolerance? So it's because when we're adding FTE units, it's at a tolerance range. And so depending on what the library's existing service population was,
It's not going to be.
Oh, those
not going to be
bands.
material. It's the bands.
The bands.
And so, yeah, it's that. Oh, come up so you can talk on the mic.
Just pull a chair up too.
Yeah.
Oh, you shouldn't.
Shout.
I know.
Sorry, public meeting.
Yeah, I understand.
And your name and
Jordan Henderson, partner with Marine and Company. Tigard in particular is because one of the board's direction was to make sure no partner received less than a 5% increase over their current. That is why theirs, the 5,700 normally would be 2 bands in the formula, but the 5% adjustment.
so I want to be clear. The board direction in with our strategic plan in supporting cities, that policy, that strategy applies across our county portfolio. So a proposed library map based upon all of your great analysis does not trump that policy, which is why I feel really strongly about making sure that the adopted service area map reflects the UPAAs. And for the most part, it's pretty clean, right? The general rule applied pretty well, but we did find through detailed analysis that there were some discrepancies. And I hear your proposal, which corrects the maps, but ensures that we are continuing to implement our previous guideposts. So now I understand how the dollars don't move around
with the numbers.
Yeah,
It's a little confusing.
So that roughly 300,000 wouldn't have to be reallocated to something else based on the maps.
Yeah.
So our proposal is to use an implementation strategy that says we're not going to reduce Beaverton and Cedar Mill by the 144,000. So the first year they would maintain the funding that we had proposed in the previous methodology before we changed the maps.
And what happens in the following years?
Well, they would get the escalation,
Okay.
That would become their new base for
right? Okay.
for the 5 year.
Yes, yes. So not reducing them in order to adopt these maps.
Yeah.
I just want to say right this moment that I'm really impressed by the amount of work and analysis and thought that's been put into this in 1 week.
Thank you. It was a challenge.
I appreciate that. And Jordan too. We've been working on.
Thanks for calling that out.
and thank
And-
you too, Aaron Bordell. And
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God,
Aaron,
The new W.
Jordan,
yeah.
Maida, Bryn.
Yeah.
It was
It's-
a lot of brilliant minds.
Yes. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so
We're getting there.
getting there. For annexation considerations, sure, this is something you had also raised, so that if a city annexes an area within their UPAA, the previously unincorporated service population will be allocated to the city. Within a 2-year time frame of the annexation, the annexed area will fully transition to the city for library service, and a service transition plan between the nonprofit library and the city would be supported by the county.
after a transition time.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not stated here. That's sort of the implication.
And it could, I'm just saying hypothetically, a city could say, we're going to contract with the nonprofit to provide the services. But they wouldn't have to.
But I think to Jason's point, underscoring that the money moves, I think is an important piece too, because whether or not it's contracted back, we need to have the strong message in this.
Okay, And then first I want to point out a typo I made that we can fix, which is that the first column at the top, that should be fiscal year 25, 26. I apologize.
Oh, that's one big mistake.
A label. It's a label. Oh,
I'd rather point it out than have one of you notice it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. And Marnie noticed it this morning, so thank you, Marnie. All right,
A
so
little late.
a little late. So, well, I'll just orient you to this chart. So the first column is the budgeted allocation in the current fiscal year we're in. The second column to the right is the proposed allocation. That's the July 31st allocation methodology that you all saw last week. If we were to not do an implementation strategy and adjust the boundary, adjust the funding to fit the boundary adjustments, that would be the change. In the third column, the fourth column shows the revised total. The last two columns show the dollar increase and the percentage increase after the proposed adjustments. But again, I think our recommendation is to keep folks at the second column, regardless of the map changes.
so I just drew a big box around the whole column, like staff proposed FY 26-27 allocation. That's your recommendation versus having the dollars flow with map changes, or map adjustments.
I also want to call out, I've looked at this chart millions of times, I'm sure, and I'm always drawn to the WCCLS increase, but I'm always reminded that that's due to the collections work that's going on. And I just want to say that publicly.
Yes, I appreciate that. And so, yeah, we would be taking on that. And then I think the other thing to call out from that is that will reduce library expenditures. So they're receiving an increase in allocation, but they will not need to direct resources to purchasing collections. They will not also need to direct staff resources to managing collections locally.
So if I come back to the prior work sessions, there were percent increases.
Oh,
Yeah, that
that
would
was
be
something I should have
that would be a
included
good
here.
slide to add following this based upon your recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you like to add that to this chart or the packet?
Not, you don't want, whatever you think communicates the staff recommendation, whether it's a separate slide or just that prior chart.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure that city councils don't get confused. Should we go over? So I'm a little confused by the questions you read earlier because they were longer than this one. These.
Well, I just added more words, but they were the same question.
Oh.
I
I'm
just-
easily confused this.
Sorry, I just made them into like real question. Does your board versus bullets? So
Condensed.
sorry.
Okay.
I want to go to that before the mayor responds.
I'd like to ask another question about this slide.
Oh.
Here we go.
Well, here's what, to answer that question first, I would like to close on board agreement in terms of our direction with regard to the map and allocation before we then turn to letters.
I have
Yep, go
another
ahead.
question, and this is, I'm wrapping my head around this, so this is really a question about clarity. When I look at this chart on the last chart, we talked about all of the UPAA transfers. So what I think this chart tells me, and I think what I'm hearing, is that we're staying with the original allocation. But if there is transfer, if there are annexations, we go back to, we account for that in the dollar assignments.
Correct,
That's
but with
this.
one additional change. No, All we can reflect, we're changing the map, but we're not changing the allocation.
Right.
So you're correct in understanding this
That's what we're
continues
sticking with.
to be the recommendation for the allocation,
And the map changes the service population.
right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. But we're not updating the distribution
numbers.
formula. That's correct. This doesn't have anything to do with future annexations.
Okay,
The dollar changes for future annexations are not reflected because action needs to be taken by the cities to do such a thing.
Right. If I understand what you're saying is that you kind of, it's almost like that's a guess.
all right, thank you. I was looking to see if there's any correlation there. So
No,
I appreciate
no.
that.
But we needed to make the map corrections to be
For the service.
reflective of our strategic plan and which is reflective of supporting the cities through the UPAAs, right? And allowing for our strategic plan with regard to annexations are the purview of the cities and we support those. Is
Then I-
that clear?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I have another question, and it's on page. Oh, it's the graph. I will keep-
16. Yeah.
It's this one with the boxes.
26, 27 or 20?
It's the colorful, the rainbow one.
Oh,
With the boxes that indicate the percent of allocation.
Keep going. Keep going.
no, I'm going the wrong way, I think. No,
Oh, no, the other way.
Wait,
yeah, I think I'm right. I went the wrong way, sorry.
There you
This
go.
So I just need some help understanding again the property. The green bar is the addition to this slide from the previous slide. Everything else is the same as the previous slide. The green bar is the addition, and it is the percent of property tax that's generated by the individual cities. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Under
so
the new formula.
county property tax, so the levy and the county general fund, not the city. It doesn't incorporate the city's tax.
right, okay, so it's only the county property tax and the levy, which includes the levy.
Yeah.
Okay, and the differential for Beaverton.
No, it's the WCCLS levy and that allocation of the general fund to WCCLS.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why this would be on Beaverton, why the differential is so much greater than the others. I can't wrap my head around why would that happen there?
The difference between the population and the green generated.
A relatively lesser valued property.
Or less property owners, or less property.
Yeah, that's based on their AV.
No, it's not about property ownership.
It's about value.
It's about
Okay.
property
Yes.
value.
Maybe
The average property in Beaverton, for whatever reason, it's valued.
Less than Hillsborough.
There may be more condos or things.
Well, remember, there's also a difference in square miles.
I just was trying to wrap my head around why that one was so glaring in relationship. And I didn't move myself to the value piece, so that makes sense. So thank you.
There's a different mix of single-family residential, multifamily residential, commercial, industrial.
You can
between
actually see
those
the opposite in Hillsborough. Why that dynamic's in place is because of large industrial.
Yeah.
That doesn't have a lot of people living.
And it also talks to the some of the annexation questions. I'm just value of opportunity. So, thank you. Thank you for helping me with that.
Yeah, so what I did, I wrote on mine, the property taxes, that's WCCLS, right? So
And
it's
general
levy plus general fund.
Thank you.
Go to the policy questions.
I think there's one thing on here that Marnie read that isn't reflected on the slide, which is just the other policy question around that strategic implementation of not reducing partner allocations due to the boundaries.
Okay, so why don't you read the real word questions versus the bullets?
I can't, yes. And do you want to do one at a time or you want me to
One
read
at a
them all?
time.
Okay, so the first one is, do you have any further inputs regarding the funding methodology?
Nope.
No.
I do have one, I don't know where to voice this, but going back to the last week's conversation around the social vulnerability index and how some of the finagling of the formula created inequities moving forward. So while I see the alignment here with the urban planning area agreement, but how do we address that? Where do we go from there? Because I thought we started out with this car, and I had to go back to the original materials published. The start of this process was to correct past imbalances. I don't see how we do that. So while I don't want to pause the project and have more conversations, I want to move along. But it seems like not only did we not correct past imbalances, but we're creating more.
So I would say, depending on how your board answers the question about maintaining the allocation without reducing Beaverton and Cedar Mills, the SVI chart that Jordan showed last week, with that was related to the staff recommended allocation is the SVI that would apply. So it did move us further away than if we had just done the formula purely without making the adjustments to keep everyone whole and the adjustments that the board directed us to make in June. So I didn't bring that chart with us, but I would refer you back to that chart, and we're happy to get it to you. So this isn't going to really change the SVI from if we don't change the allocation formula.
Well, the way I also went back and looked at the SBI chart is the number of jurisdictions that fall below the line is greater with the current funding methodology than with the proposed methodology. So exactly. And we've also raised the wage level for the nonprofit libraries as well, and have other beneficial attributes to this allocation following best practices that the old model did not. So on the whole, I think this is a much better methodology.
Is the general question of AV growth of, at or above 4.25, is that in the first bullet or in the second one? Second one seems like it's specific.
So the second question for your board, if this is what you're asking.
Oh, well, I'm just trying to figure out, is the
You
comment
are
about
correct.
AV?
It's specific to just those two.
Yes.
So I guess my one comment on inputs for funding methodology would be around AV growth rate and what happens there. And I'm particularly concerned, for example, in a future year or two, when the county revenue from, for example, SIP goes way down, and that's going to cause things to be added back to the property tax roll, which may artificially inflate a growth rate, at least numerically, that then really reflects less revenue for the county overall, but appears like a much bigger growth rate. So I want to make sure that that kind of a sample situation gets addressed here, because I don't think if we see an artificially inflated 8, 10, 12%, that somehow that should mean that we're just doing that like across the board to the libraries. Like I don't think that's the right policy.
So are you suggesting a cap?
I'm suggesting an evaluation above 4.25% without automatic
So,
action.
yeah, so I apologize, in our presentation last week, we did have a chart that showed what happens if the AV rate is below 4.25, if it's 4.25, or if it's above 4.25. The board always has discretion in how you allocate the county general fund. But we did have a chart in there that demonstrated what would happen in each of those different scenarios. We didn't anticipate, we haven't put a cap on county AV.
Okay. I want to say, I think we have to see how things go into future years. We have, the work that Jerry and I did looking at misstep over 20 plus years showed me that there was one year where property taxes on the whole came in below 3%, right? People tend to think that property taxes increased by 3%. No, it's a 3% high-end cap, but they can come in below that. The multiple city councilors are saying, well, why can't you commit to a 4.25% increase for every year of the levy? Well, I never have. It's always been based upon what the overall property tax growth is. We're now going through these historic adjustments where SIP agreements are retiring, which is another inflection point or exception case we've not dealt with before. And I think we just have to wait and see from
I
year over
agree.
year.
I just don't want our partners having expectations around that are not
That's-
realistic.
Well, which is why the current proposal is we've only provided forecasts, but the way the allocation works is based upon the actual realities of the property tax revenue that comes in.
But to Commissioner Snyder's point, I think with an asterisk that says we recognize there'll be significant changes as SIP,
There may be as we go through it. There may be.
I think I'm going to follow up with what Jason's talking about, because as Marnie said, we as a commission can always choose not to increase the general fund above the 4.25% for this if it would come in at a higher AV rate. My sense is I want to take us out of that pressure by cities and libraries to, if it comes in at 6 or 7, that we should allocate 6 or 7. And then we say, no, we're not going to do that. And it's kind of another debate. I would like us to put kind of a bright line in there. And here's my analogy to this. So we go back to, and I'm sorry if I've said this to you before, but we go back to the 90s when the stock market was booming and PERS was guaranteeing 8%, and it was well above 8%, and PERS decided to change that and give all that additional upside away. So they made everybody richer. Now we're upside down in the billions. Had we not done that, we would not be we'd probably still be upside down, but we would not be at that critical point. And the burden of that deficit falls upon us and cities and lots of other organizations, because we're all trying to make up for that deficit. I don't want to put us in a situation where we would be pressured to increase above 4.25, and maybe the next year or a year later it comes in at 3.5 or 3, and now we have no money to backfill. So my proposal, and I apologize, this is coming in late, but it would be that we cap it at 4.25, and anything above 4.25, we put into a reserve for the years coming that drops below 4.25. So at least we would have something to backfill it at that point in time. Maybe not enough, you know, what AB comes in at, but at least we have a little bit of a savings account to do that. And it also takes us out of the bullseye.
We're talking about something that has not even been presented in public. It hasn't even been presented to me individually. Okay? We're talking, some of you are talking about a hypothetical that feels very real to you. I haven't seen that math. What I do know is we provide forecasts. And every year, and all the best we can do is we've committed to a new formula and a first year projected revenue. And every year after that is just a forecast. And nobody should be doing budgeting based upon guaranteed of the revenue flow coming in from the forecast. That's why we label these things forecasts. A forecast is not a promise of funding. It's taking a model and best assumptions. So if there is information presented to us in future months, I'm with you. Okay, but you're talking about something that hasn't been presented yet. So maybe by the time we've got a proposed IGA, something may be clear to us.
Well, I guess my pushback on that would be, I think it is our responsibility to consider what ifs in making our policy decisions. And we are making a policy decision here, even though you're saying these are projections, and they are.
Some of our cities are asking for.
They're asking
that's
for
what
an
guarantees.
absolute commitment, and that's not what you're suggesting.
I'm suggesting that we clarify our commitment will be what we've said here at 4.25, but no commitments to doing that. But at the same time, 4.25 is the maximum, regardless of what the reality is.
That's the point. They're looking for guaranteed 4.25. You're saying it's going to be between 0 and a cap of 4.25. Because our current is between 0 and AV. And the current AV for this model was 4.25.
I just want to take away the expectation that if it goes above 4.25, that we're going to allocate that.
Well, that's not what I'm hearing from city councilors. And I hear that it's in your proposal, but what city councilors and at least one mayor have asked me is they want a guaranteed 4.25.
Well, we've all heard that. I agree with that.
Which we can't give.
No, and we've all said that. So we've been very consistent.
Great. So we're continue to be in agreement.
I just want to take that conversation. I just want to take away that argument when it goes above 4.25. Set the stage early. There's clarity. 4.25 is the cap. We can go back to your bullet points.
So we've heard one member of the board with a new addition. How would the board like to go with that?
I mean, I don't want to provide any guarantees, and I think it would be I guess I would not say I would never do it, but I would find it would be a very unusual situation where I wouldn't agree with Commissioner Willie in the future. But I also do understand that we're talking about hypotheticals. We're talking about, forecasts of what we do and don't know, and I get that. But I think I would tend to probably agree in most situations in the future.
I understand what you're saying about we only know what we know for current situations, but what we are dealing with is a relationship with our mayors and our counselors across the county. And in that relationship, they ask us for guarantees. They ask us for certainty, if you will. I think that's the term that I hear most frequently is certainty. So to Jerry's point, I like the fact that we have a certainty that is 0 to 4.25, depending on what the reality is, with a cap at 4.25 that allows for a reserve fund that's separate from a library reserve to have the opportunity to look at future situations. That's how I would put it. Not
And I guess I didn't mean to put another wrinkle on this, because obviously the bullet points that are shown here are areas that we need to confirm and agree on, and I think we're there. So maybe we hit the pause button on my suggestion, and so until we can put some more, I guess, meat on that bone. But for right now, I think what Lisa and the team are asking is for us to confirm these so that we can move ahead. And we do need to absolutely do this just because the levy is staring us in the face right now.
Well, and as IGAs are being negotiated, I think what we've just discussed at least helps provide some clarity around what might be being
In an
discussed in
IGA.
this
I
space.
was going to suggest we could bring this conversation back as part of the IGA discussion and negotiation if that's okay. Okay. Right, on to the next. Okay, so does your board want to keep Aloha and Forest Grove at the same rate of potential increases as the rest of the partners? So that's the projection of 4.25%.
That's just a projection.
Yes. So versus in previously we had
Even higher.
had it higher for
Yes.
those two. So
Yep.
I'm seeing yeses. Okay. Okay. So here's the big one. Does your board, I'll split this into questions. Does your board wish to adjust the library boundaries to reflect the UPAA considerations?
Yes.
And do you direct staff to use an implementation strategy that would maintain the funding allocation without reducing Beaverton and Cedar Mill, without reducing their base beginning in 2026?
Yes.
And then the next one is, does your board agree to adding future annexation considerations that was discussed?
I have questions about that. Why does it say Forest Grove?
Well, that's the next.
That was my typo. I
Oh.
apologize. That should be 2 separate bullet points.
Got it. Yeah, because
The last
the next,
bullet point should be two.
the next bullet point
Yep.
is, does your board support requiring Forest Grove and Aloha to provide ramp up plans as part of the MOU that Lisa discussed?
Yes.
Okay. And then do you want to go back? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have questions about the future annex part of it, and including that in the IGA. Like, what does that mean for residents heading into the direction of forced annexation?
Reflective. This is reflective of what we've already adopted in our county strategic plan. And the cities are the ones who handle annexations.
I just don't want us to sound like we are, in essence, insinuating forced annexations to these lands.
I think we're simply adding language to the IGA that would reflect if the city moves forward with an annexation, that within a 2-year time frame, they would work with the nonprofit and develop a transition plan, and then the county would support that transition plan. So the funding would follow the agreement. Yeah. Did I get that right?
Yeah, just for the record, I have some concerns about this as well, but I also know that annexations are the city's responsibilities, and it's complex and it's controversial. So we'll let them deal with that.
I just want us to make it sound like we're sort of providing the carrot in this.
I think it would be a very small carrot.
Okay,
Okay.
I just,
Um,
and
So I don't think that would drive.
Library
conversation.
components.
Yeah.
Yes, we're not pressuring through this language. We're just stating with our county strategic plan. I think that's all.
Letters.
Question. Yeah, I was gonna say all the policy questions. So we'll go back to the letters.
Packet is Mayor Rubinek. Page 44. Well, I have the old. No. Page 44 of the packet. I've read the letter and I'm fine with it. But I think it should also reference we add a sentence about referencing the work session material from today. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this response is fine. It would be interesting, and I haven't had this conversation. Jason, maybe you've had this with the mayor, but there is so much money collected in the urban unincorporated as reflected on these graphs that how would that work if the baseline was they get the same amount of money as collected in property taxes? Basically, Hillsborough and Tualatin, I think, are the only two. Would be the only two winners in that, and then you've got all of that unincorporated money that wouldn't have to be allocated someplace. And how would you do that? So I think it's an interesting question he asked, but I don't know that there's a solution to that.
I've had a lot of conversations with him and the council, but not about that specific. Like when that request came in, I had not heard that one specifically, and I haven't discussed that specific policy point with him. In any place though where you have a lot of industrial and commercial property, this dynamic will be at play, and you know, it kind of comes down to the age-old question: like, does property vote? You know, like is that people? How many? You know, it just there's a much broader policy or set of policy questions there that it's just not exactly how we typically allocate our resources as a government.
Yep.
Or as governments.
Certainly points to the difference between our cities.
Yeah. It is very telling.
We can add that sentence to the letter to Mayor.
I'm also trying to look back for that. Oh, here we go. I have to go back to the prior work session materials to see what the current levy provides. Because you did between those two different work sessions. September 9th. Whoever corrected me earlier, it was yes, indeed, the 9th, not the 6th.
I'm sorry, Catherine, what are you looking for?
We had a prior chart.
So the current
The
the distribution, Tualatin actually was getting a slightly, I believe.
it's on slide 34, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So what we see is with the recommendation, they will be getting an increase compared to what they're currently receiving. It's just not the full amount that the to slide 18 reflects.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What I had looked at that chart previously Yeah, everybody will be getting more dollars than they have previously. So
I think we made that was the baseline that we talked about a long time ago about everybody's going to get a percentage increase above what they're currently getting. And that was ours.
problem is the slides don't say that nice and crisply. The numbers do. Okay. So what in the conversations I've had with city councilors, I'm not sure that point has been obvious. We've had all these work sessions for this whole levy cycle, this whole program in public. So I can't speak to Tualatin or Tigard, but I know Beaverton had briefings, but they didn't have a work session. So there's no way for me to know that they've gotten the message that their base funding will be going up.
Well, I think that's a good point because in the Beaverton Library, it specifically says the first year of the levy cycle to be estimated at 7.4 million, which is a 9% increase anticipated. That information is not in the Mayor Bubinek letter. So we might want to put that in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's not as directly responsive to the question posed, but I think it's.
Yeah.
Context.
Mhm.
I mean, I understand why you guys drafted it the way you did. I was acknowledging that.
Draft letter for Mayor
Yes,
Beatty.
yes.
I think we had, it was in the packet last week for your board, but I think we forgot to formally address it. And so we're just bringing it back. Oh, deferred.
Deferred.
Yeah. But what I've read it today, so it's fresh in my mind, and I don't have any problem with what's here. But I think we also want to make similar points as to the
Be very
bottom level. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate my being able to participate in last week's meeting. Sorry, I had to jump out early, but
And so to summarize, we talked about that one slide, that slide 34 will improve. But I think it would also, for the sake of communications, be helpful if you take the words for the questions that were asked and add in like bolded italics that the board agreed or said yes, or, you know, for each one of the things. Okay. So that you have that standalone set of information to provide.
Well, include the verbal question that we have.
Yeah.
And I figured that out at like, I don't know, 8 o'clock last night.
Marty and Lisa, can I check something with you? In the letter to Mayor Beatty, you have 9%, but the slide we went over earlier in the PowerPoint presentation says 7%.
So
That's
it
a
will be the 9% because it's gonna be that second column on this one.
the 7
So
was
this-
if we adjusted it by then.
Right, it would have gone down to 7% if we would have reduced it by the 100.
And that's that missing percentage
Right,
column.
that's the missing percentage.
We'll update it in the.
Yeah, we have to add that to the
And make it clear that everything from the end of the second column over was proposals. Yep.
Yep.
We are done with the letters, I think, right?
We're done with the whole topic. Okay. I'll ask a question offline. Well, it's just for clarity versus change, great.
No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
The next step is that we come to your board next Tuesday. To codify these directions. So it should be, a short, crisp presentation, just so that you can codify your direction to us.
Really, we're continuing with the allocation, the formula and the allocation from the prior work session. We've just updated the map to be consistent with our strategic plan. And we've completed the letters. Yep.
Yeah. And just again, from point of reference, remember I said that in the 90s I was on WCCLS when I was first appointed to City Council. They spent years working on a funding allocation. We've done this in a matter of months.
No. We've been working on it since 2023.
Well, but my point being is that with the specificity that we've got in here, so we could actually see the numbers. So I think we
It
as
got
a
political, Commissioner, really, it got political.
no, I just think we've done a great job in a very short period of time on this.
And I'd like to underscore my thanks to the staff and to Marina, but I also want to say thank you to my fellow commissioners because your input as we move this forward has been valuable. And Jerry and I were involved early on in a lot of this, and as we moved it forward, it became real, and it became real very quickly. But your input, whether it be on EPAs, whether it be on the finance structure, whatever, it was very helpful. So I think this has been a collaborative effort.
Thank you very much, team. Thank you. Thank you to our partners for being here today. We are going to take a 15-minute break. We will restart at 10:45.
And they go to go.
After they get more than 10.
Oh, yeah.
Well, go.
Yeah, I know.
So they still get.
But Maida was asking me. That's what this stay focused. It was the topic. I was talking to Maida about the topic. important that we all recognize that Catherine has decaffeinated herself. So,
Coffee? And you're
Oh,
that's
so my offer was very inappropriate.
yeah.
All right.
No, I had one. I had a shorty Diet Coke. Ugh, I think I'm falling asleep.
All right, commissioners, welcome back and back over to adjourned.
Great, thank you, Clerk Moss. So, next we're going to go over the board agenda and scheduling review. So we have an updated set of rolling agenda items, and takes us through the end of the year. And I just wanted to make sure we're all highlighted on a few things. October 30th, we're going to have an additional roundtable for this month, and we'll go over that a little bit later. But since I'm just looking at all the dates for October, that's on the set. There are some topics that have moved here and there, but they're all still reflected in the rolling agenda overall. So just a reminder, there is the annual tour of the jail this Friday. So that is one of our required duties. Then there is the annual housing forum on October 30th as well, plus the Cat Beaverton grand opening on Friday, October 24th. So it isn't just all work. There is some interesting stuff outside of work session to do. Then we're into November. In November, we only have two work session and meeting dates. The first is on November 4th, and the second is on the 18th. In addition, we have our Roundtable Day, Washington County on November 6th, and then a CWS work session day on November 7th.
I am planning to go, I guess this can be a discussion topic. I'm planning to go to the AOC conference and my sophomore seminar with my county college class. Is that Tuesday morning?
Nope, it's an afternoon work session and an evening meeting. So you'll just be missing that day.
Okay, you're saying here is an afternoon work session?
Yeah.
I would say, okay.
Yeah, it's at 2:00.
Oh, it's 2:00. Okay.
Well, this says 1 o'clock.
But it's an afternoon.
It's an afternoon work session and an evening board meeting. So, yeah.
I just wanted,
Just the way it works out this year with Veterans Day on a Tuesday.
I just wanted to
As
make
far as
sure
I
that-
know, you're the only one going to the AOC conference.
Okay.
I'm not even planning on attending the business for myself. Don't know what anybody else is doing.
I was going to wait till after the District 8 meeting to see.
Well, are you saying that you will be at that work session and that board meeting?
Well, now that I see that's in the afternoon, I can look at what's on the schedule. I may be able to attend virtually.
Okay, because I am out as well.
You are?
On the 18th.
Oh, yes. You're out as of the
So
15th.
they'll be down to 3 if you don't.
I will do my best to attend virtually, both the work session and the.
And then we're into the month of December. We have the happy situation of 3 December meetings this year. I'm expecting, Commissioner Willie, that you'll be back for Tuesday the 2nd.
Yes, I will.
Excellent, thank you. And we have our board roundtable on December 4th. We'll talk about the importance of that in a moment. But you can see we've got some big topics in December, both for Washington County and CWS, as well as our 2 exec reviews, 1 annual and 1 6-month. Any highlights or questions? on any of the months, including December?
I have a question on,
Now's a good time for any and all clarifying questions.
on December 9th, says, Commissioner Woolley, you're going to be at the Association for Oregon. I don't know what that is.
You said December 9th?
Yeah.
No, he's yeah, in that row. The Association of Oregon and California Counties, that's a
That's
whole,
that other group.
Yeah.
but that's on Thursday and Friday.
That's now, that's the 11th.
Yeah, I was
I
just-
think it's down in Eugene.
Okay. I was just trying to understand that.
Yeah.
Let me keep my tabs on you.
Mhm.
And the other thing to note, I'm glad you got me looking more closely at December. We're having our nighttime meeting on the 9th. So I'm going to switch over to the roundtable plan, and it's not a problem if there are any other remaining rolling agenda questions that come up. I'm actually going to start on page 3, which is our October. So we've already got our October agenda, but the October 30th agenda, we also may have some additional community service level information to go over. So I'm just penciling that in for right now. Why? So I put into an email for all of you what we're trying to do, and I'm going to highlight it here, and we can go back over it during the finance and budget process. Ms. Angie, as we went back to our prior roundtable and budget slide deck from September 4th, Ms. Angie and team would like to be able to start the budget process earlier this year with the amount of change and analysis. We've learned a lot each year about what the exercise demands of them, which is a tremendous lot. And they need us to provide our direction early in the month of December, which puts us in a little bit of a time crunch. So we have 2 options. The option that I put here has us supporting their need for direction. So we would finish developing our direction by December 4th and then adopt our guiding principles and priorities on December 9th, which is as earliest as I could possibly see us doing it. And option B is say, sorry, board needs more time and we got to stick to January. So what I'm just trying to highlight is this plan reflects that ask and the
So,
What is the need for the board?
so to clarify, we always open budget at the beginning of December. It can be, it is a far easier task if we have clear budget direction from the board when we open budget in December. So we're not opening it earlier. This is aligning those timings because otherwise departments, when I give guidance to departments in December, it's initial guidance and pending further guidance from the board in January. You did affirm the budget principles and priorities last year in January. Part of that reason, because onboarding of a new commissioner, and the board at that time had talked about wanting to make sure there was alignment from you all before giving that final budget directive. So that I'm just adding a few more words to it. What does staff
need, staff needs budget direction from your board, because the budget is one of the most important policy documents that we annually adopt. So I think what the question for you all to discuss is, what is the amount of time that you want to spend together? What is the information you want to work through as a group of 5 to give that clear direction? And my request is that we do complete it in December, so it's a clear, it's clear during, and I sent you all an email, layers of uncertainty right now.
Does the output of what we're producing need to be dramatically bigger or more complicated than the guiding principles and priorities that let's say we're starting from a place of what we did last year that we reaffirmed in January when I joined. Like, is that the level of direction you're seeking, or are you wanting something much more detailed?
That is the level that we've historically had. It is up to your board if you would like to be more descriptive in that direction. And I think it's worthy of that discussion, because the reality is we've been in 5 years of budget cuts over and over. Most of my updates and emails to you highlight stress and strain of staff. Last year, we did eliminate some programs and services. Some, I'm not saying significant. We did turn one service back to the state. What?
Which sent a strong message to the state.
And so this year, we'll see where the fiscal forecast ends up, but we have a structural imbalance in our budget. So I am not anticipating that this is an ad year. It is once again a subtraction exercise.
I guess I'm just trying to, like the traditional role of, at least that I've experienced in local government for a long time, has been as the budget officer. There's a forecast. The governing body, which is us for the county, provides some general direction, and like what I think this board's done a good job of. And you then, as the budget officer, propose a plan, which I thought last year went from a communication standpoint pretty well. I realize we're off topic probably. No.
Well, why don't we just come back to it after we go through the findings?
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
So the last thing I think we have in this section is the 2026 board meetings. You have that in your packet. It's page 56 of 202. You want?
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's here somewhere.
Okay. So what we have is, remember, we're starting in 2026. So what you see in the red is under regular meetings. Our budget would be adopted June 26th. Oh, I should have started. Sorry. Back in March. Remember, we support school vacation week. So that's why we'll be having our evening meeting on March 17th. So pretty much we're going with the flow of 4 meetings each month, with the exception of March because of school vacation week. Then continuing on, July 4th is not getting in the way of our July set of meetings. And we go into August, September, October. Veterans Day doesn't land on a Tuesday, 2026. But then, we do run into the Thanksgiving holiday. So that's where November 17th under regular meeting should be a strike through because it's a PM meeting. Then in December, we Oh, what a gift. We have 3 December meetings again. And our evening meeting will be December 15th. Or we might end up doing what we've done this year and swap the 8th and the 15th. So that's on that side. And then on the other side, we're, I think, we still have to work out making sure we've got the proper training for us as a board relative to ORS 198 and 451. So staff, CWS staff is still looking at that. So if we stuck to our current scheme, this shows the CWS works, full day work session days in there. But we have historically not had a board roundtable in May because of all the budget stuff. And I think that's pretty much all to say on that. So it just starts getting our juices flowing for Shazam. Next year's coming. So coming fast. So is there anything else just in terms of our getting organized part? Okay, great.
Like, give you vacation information now, or can we do that
For
off?
26, your staff assistant and clerk Moss, and it goes into the rolling agenda. Kudos to you. I haven't figured out vacation for the remainder of this year, let alone into 26. So I know I have another nephew's wedding to go to. No, it's not nephew, cousin's son. Anyway, next year.
School calendars can dictate all of that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yes. I need to be reminded of that all the time. Okay, so if the finance and budget folks are ready, we are ahead of schedule, which is a good thing. Thank you.
I'd like John Steyer, Aaron Doyle, and Debbie Watkins wanted to pull up a chair too.
I need to move down so Jerry and Kim can come over so you guys have a little more elbow room.
We're okay.
Okay.
Gives you a little bit more space.
The board, here again at our staff and financial planning at your roundtable. I would like to take an opportunity to to introduce one of my colleagues who you don't see very often, but you hear the name quite often, and that is Debbie Watkins, who is our benefit and leaves manager.
The good way.
I think that's the title, or wizard. I will call you wizard if it's not benefit.
We don't use that word anymore. No more wizard.
Oh, good. Good. I was Mr. Wizard.
So I had the benefit of having a good benefits overview of just what we're looking for at projections wise with Debbie recently, and then ran into her on the second floor. And she shared that she's just celebrating her 5 years with Washington County. And I said, congratulations, and you get the winning prize of presenting to the board with us on round. So thank you, Debbie, for making time, especially as Debbie's just one of the faces. We've talked about the ERP transition, but her and her team, significant crunch time, not only as we approach year end, but making the transitions and some of the unanticipated hurdles that we've encountered along the way. So thank you for handling that with grace.
I can't believe you've been here 5 years. When I started, I bombarded you with a lot of questions. And you spectacularly answered for me. So, wow.
I know. 5 years.
Aaron, can you do
That you were already here for like 30. When I was asking you my questions.
I know that seems like yesterday's subject matter expert.
Yes, Chair. Yes.
So really the focus of today, I'm not going to talk through each of the bullet points that's on the overview, but it is really all of our budget levers that will be inputted into as part of the budget forecast, which will come back to your board next month. Next slide. So just a review of just where we are at with the upcoming roundtables. We were able to move up the state and federal forecast to this month, so that's a change you'll see in the strikeout. On this slide, we have not added the October 30th roundtable per your board's just conversation today, so that will be added and we'll determine at the end of the roundtable today what that focus could be. Next slide. So I'm going to turn the next slides over to John to talk about our fiscal outlook.
All right, thank you. For the record, I'm John Starr, I'm the Chief Financial Officer. And I do appreciate Debbie Watkins from HR Benefits and Aaron Doyle from Government Relations joining the team here. Nice to come with some support and some expertise. I would just highlight.
I thought the CFO had huge shoulders, you know?
Do rely on our experts. I do want to lead off with the macroeconomic outlook and also just to highlight that my information comes from the Oregon Economic Revenue Forecast. This was put out in September as part of your packet. The next forecast is in 19 November. So if there's any updates, we'll provide that in the following session. I did have the opportunity a couple weeks ago to attend the Oregon Association of Treasurers and Finance Officers, where we had Carl Riccadonna, who was the state's chief economist, actually brief us on this forecast, and he provided a lot of graphs that really made it understandable. I'm not going to bore you with all that today. I'm going to talk through some of the big higher points. And if you have questions, I can dive deeper.
Are his useful charts the same ones as in the document?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, he pulled those and kind of walked through all those. I don't have any speaking notes, but it's very well done. So.
Thanks.
So just on the macroeconomic outlook, these are some key highlights. The national economy has lost momentum over the last year based on the metrics of gross domestic product and employment. And the consensus economists continue to express a heightened risk of recession, although it's slightly less than last quarter's forecast. U.S. real GDP growth is a full percentage point slower than a year ago and projected to slip to just 1% per year by year end. This pace, when GDP growth gets to 1%, that's an indicator of a recession. So he talked a lot about kind of where we're on that edge, but likely coming back. It'll be good. The state's office remains cautious on views of recession, driven by the uncertainty, both with businesses and households on tariffs, immigration policies, central bankers' cautiousness on controlling inflation. And with the Fed hikes, just had one. We'll likely have a couple in the months ahead. And then, of course, the key indicator of the domestic product is a trigger. So while it's a precarious period, it projects the near-term economy is expected to begin to regain. Moving on to the Oregon outlook. These are the top line changes in the report. And I attempted to put in here the top line like under hiring, unemployment, and economic population. Those are the report from the state's report. And then pull out some sub bullets on how does that relate to Washington County. I use some other sources for that, which are indicated there. But hiring, Oregon's job creation is about 1% lower, in part due to recent payroll revisions. The county bullet there, we reached 305,000 in July, which is a decrease of 5,700 employed, primarily due to manufacturing and some of the layoffs that we've seen. On unemployment, the rate was revised higher in the near term. So our last quarter for the state, it was 4.6%. It's now at 5%. And that's the highest since the summer of 2021. Or if you go past the recession, the pandemic period, 2016 was the last highest Washington County, we're up from 3% last year to 4.5% this year. The majority of increases are due to manufacturing, information, and retail trade. Income lower relative to previous outlook. Washington County saw 1.9% decline in average wages on the first quarter comparison year on year. And then the population growth for Oregon was revised lower, 4.4%. And also, you can see the county is 0.7%, a little bit higher than Oregon.
John, on a subjective note here, I attended the job fair event at the Wingspan last week where there were over 2,000 people at that job fair. And I think it supports what your numbers are here. And just to take it a step further, it was interesting to walk back to my vehicle in the parking lot and see cyber trucks and expensive level cars. I mean, it was interesting to see who was there. So it was pretty eye-opening for me.
The report highlights some key economic forecast assumptions in these categories. In the federal fiscal policy, the 27 Tax Act rate extends indefinitely and also adds deductions for tip and overtime pay. In the state and local fiscal policy, unspent pandemic era funds authorized under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was about $5 billion for Oregon over a 5-year period. Investments aimed to modernize roads, bridges, transit, rail, ports, airports, broadband, and drinking water, wastewater infrastructure. And then the states are also larger share for Medicaid. That's a trickle-down effect to our residents. Monetary policy, the Fed funds rate cut. So, like I said, it recently cut a 1/4 point. Anticipated 2 more incremental cuts later this year or early next year. And then projecting outcomes to bring the federal funds rate to range about 2.73%, which is very close to a long-run neutral range. The big uncertainty has been all summer, of course, is the tariffs and trade. So there are tariffs that go into effect this quarter. Lumber, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, critical minerals, with the range there 10 to 25%. And then the International Emergency Economic Powers Act has implications for tariffs and imports from China at 20%, Canada at 35%, and Mexico at 25%, with Canada and Mexico stepping down to 12% by early 25 or 26. And then there's also the reciprocal tariffs that are held at rates announced in August. And those range from 10 to 50%. So a lot of maybe some more certainty on tariffs, but there's also uncertainty go forward. And then, of course, what we see in the news, the state budget had a surplus a year ago, and now we're projecting a decrease, a shortfall brought about by the state estimating a loss of $880 million in revenue over the next 2 years, in large part due to the state tax code realignment and what changes in federal policy. And of course, we also see in Portland and other metro partners.
John, is there any discussion? Maybe this is a parent question. Is there any discussion? Because I'd read in the newspaper a couple of weeks ago that Oregon is kind of re-looking at that disconnect.
Well,
federal change.
I was one too when they passed the transportation bill, but maybe Aaron can answer that.
There has been a little bit of conversations of Aaron Doyle, Senior Government Relations Manager, for the record. The possibility of a disconnect from the federal tax code has come up in some conversations with legislators. However, it would be considered a revenue raising vote, so they would need the 2/3 majority, and the chances of that happening in a 2026 session are really challenged because of we saw what happened with the transportation package and how much political lift that took, and if the appetite is there to do that in the short session as everyone's looking at primaries and the general election cycle for representatives at the state level. but also getting a better hold on what the federal impacts and roll down effects are. All of that is being combined into a broader conversation that will start in 2026 about how to adjust for this almost $1 billion loss of revenues that would come from the feds into the state budget that is starting in this biennium and readjusting the budget and then asking for a disconnect from the federal tax code is a really big lift for a 6-week session. And then rolling that into the additional costs that John hinted at into the 2027 and also, but then having the opportunity to do another disconnect in 2027 when you have a longer period to have that conversation about impacts. So it might come up in 2026, but it's very unlikely. But it is part of the overall conversation I think the state legislature has to have with itself.
But if they do it if they would do it in the short session in 26, it still would not become effective until January 27.
Correct.
And if they do it in 27, it wouldn't become effective until 28. And some of these provisions have timelines for renewal, and they're not permanent. Some are permanent, some are not. But anyway, yeah, that would be very convoluted, I would think. Oregon would have a hard time navigating that. But that was just one thing.
So my question to you is, so my takeaway from this is we're going to be living with this adjustment for the next 2 fiscal years.
Yes, I believe that would be the case.
At a minimum.
Is that clear to all of us?
Yeah, and I just want to make the reconnection. I made this a couple weeks ago. I don't know if Commissioner really heard it or was here when I said it, but SHS for this too.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, this is just state level. When we start dominoing that down to metro, county, we're all in this together, just for level. You're right. I think, Jason, I thought I read that the latest projection for SHS money was 10 million.
In a minute,
We're going to be getting an updated forecast in December.
Yeah.
They take it to the SHS meeting. First.
I'm sure Molly and the team are monitoring that very closely.
It's coming to us in work session in December.
Okay.
Yeah, so I get great slides where we get to talk about federal impacts and how the layers of uncertainty that Ms. Angie referenced earlier. So one thing that we do know is that the One Big Beautiful Bill, as it's called, or HR 1, has passed. It has a number of things. One of the things we just talked about is how we calculate income. That's where income taxes are also defining income for the state. That's where that sits with that $88 million. And then to your point, Commissioner Snyder, the SHS revenues, those income measurements are also tied to those federal income tax. And that's where we don't know what that impact is yet. They will bring it forward in the December revenue forecast for that. In addition to that, with Metro indexing income thresholds, you add those two things together, we will see something happen with the SHS forecast for the next few years. All of that is also what the state is working through and this disconnect conversation. When it comes to Medicaid and the other changes, those have a delayed start date. So that's where the state is looking to the 27-29 biennium of impacts to their budgets that will be higher costs for them to run programs, as well as how to protect those who may not be able to stay on Medicaid because of changes to who is an eligible recipient, and how that it gets accounted for in the state budget is a roll down effect from HR 1. The tariffs, of course, we are a economy that does have a large portfolio of imports and exports, impacts the ability to do housing at reasonable prices, what our major industries are here in Washington County in particular, but across Oregon, not just our semiconductors, but our agricultural, we have a huge export in our agricultural industry across a number of those things that are here in Washington County. Timber is another place. So all of those things kind of start to stack as well. And with those layers of uncertainty and they come on, they come off, has an impact on what those businesses are worth and the revenues they can bring into the state. The federal budget, as you're all aware, we are now in a shutdown. That conversation every day, I get at least 3 emails from VSA about might happen. So included in your packet for your awareness are what VSA sent last week and what they've updated us with yesterday when the shutdown started. You're still working through what those impacts are directly to the county. We know that a lot of those impacts might be rolled out a little bit with some of the process by which funds are allocated. Some things at the federal level aren't required to have an appropriation because they are appropriated separately, so they can continue to pay out things. HUD has, for example, I found this out from Molly this morning, that they have a contingency fund for a few more months worth of vouchers, so there's some security there depending upon how long the shutdown lasts, but it will slow down everything that comes from the feds to us. Any grants that are pending contracting, those aren't considered essential services. And then there is a number of employees who are otherwise paid at the federal level who are not being paid for the work that they are currently required to do. A number of employees who are just furloughed, they aren't working, they aren't getting paid, they will not receive pay because they did not work. And then the possibility has been put out there. It's still very unclear, so VSA hasn't been able to track this to anything other than the conversation that happens somewhat publicly and somewhat privately about the potential for further reductions in force at the federal level, looking not just to furlough employees, but permanently shut down while they are shut down, doing a reduction in force for some areas of federal service. And then, of course, you add the last piece of where all of this gets very challenging is the federal and state grants, particularly the state grants that roll through from federals. All of this continues to be an ever-changing landscape, and I will not answer any questions about what the litigation portion of that landscape looks like, but every day is a different set of circumstances, and now all of that is on pause as we go through a shutdown. So I do fun slides like this. I will take any questions you have, but will not necessarily have answers today. But as VSA continues to talk to us about what the shutdowns outlook is, I will make sure that the board has that information as right now, we're not anticipating direct impacts to county employees because of the federal situation. Go ahead.
This may be a question that's going to be answered later, but I'm assuming we're monitoring what the impact of all of these on CAT will be, specifically in Medicaid. So are we going to get an update on that at some point in time?
You'll be getting an update. Staff are looking at. I've had a few of you ask what will be the impact, so that update will be coming to you. As a reminder, CAT was the operating model of CAT is that it is scalable. However, we are dealing once again with layers of uncertainty, and we know that there are, as you've heard from both John and Aaron, there's potential cuts, but we don't even know what that magnitude is. So
It's on the rolling agenda. I think memory serves me right for early December. I just want to underscore the uncertainty. There was an article in the newspaper today about the continuum of care, which affects behavioral health, but it also affects housing vouchers. So there's such a integration that affects people who live in our community. So we need to give our team some patience in looking at all the different variables. We do have in the reserves for the CAT, they did try to forecast some first years of operation. So any funds that came in through the various funding sources, some of the opioid settlements, for example, pay out over time. I recall from those presentations how they had tried to build up some funds to account for the first years of startup operation costs. So we may have a little bit there, but at the end of the day, it's a reimbursement model, assuming that Medicaid would be covering a lot of the clientele that would need those services.
Along the same discussion line, the most recent reduction in funding that we received from Care Oregon, 3 million is, excuse me, 4 million. That is not related to the uncertainty that we're looking to in the future. I just want to.
Yeah, let me add a bit more words to that. It is not related to the federal budget. It is not related to any reduction of the state budget. It is related to the current rate structure that is in place. And we'll be providing more information coming up, because this is where I get into a slippery slope that there's people smarter than me that know the details of this. As has been shared with the board and also reported in the media, now we have just been informed in this. So staff are going through the analysis of what it means to our behavioral health services here at the county. It does mean a reduction in services. And as staff continue to bring this information forward to you, we will be very clear about what our service outcomes or service reductions are and impacts. That is not information I want to be sharing. It's not a reality I want to be in, but we have to actually be saying it out loud. And I will just share, I have received some concern that we were very clear in what the impact of the state adopted budget on community corrections was, and that we cannot accept the level of downward dispositions from the prison system. And some feedback that does the county really want to be saying this? Well, I don't want to, but this is actually the true service outcome by the loss of those funds. So
The reality needs to be discussed.
we have to put the reality on the table so that it's known.
From external.
Combination.
Okay.
Combination. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the rubber is meeting the road, and we're doing the best we can to make sure that we're being factual.
Thank you.
On another topic that I read in the news was the impact to SNAP as well. I'll be curious about the WIC program.
I will look into that and get information back to the board on those impacts. It is something we are also tracking.
Yeah, that's definitely tied to that.
Yeah.
So these layers of uncertainty is one reason why I proposed the topic that we'll come back to after lunch, to prime the pump, to ensure we're all thinking about what reductions mean in terms of not just our service level, but our service to community. We need to be getting our brains thinking about that because these are the hard choices that will come through our proposed budget, and we can't just wait to internalize the impacts of that. And the state legislature is also going to be dealing with that through that $88 million cut in the short session. So the more we can get ourselves thinking about that, and I'll provide a little bit more context later about that. Million. Oh, bummer.
Add one more.
Which it was.
Yeah.
I liked your number better.
888 million. 888 million. Almost a billion.
All right, I'm going to change gears a little bit and talk about the drivers and assumptions. The main ones that we're going to use to influence or to project the general fund projection. There's certainly a lot of assumptions that go into building that, down to the line item detail. These are some of the key ones. And of course, we have assumptions in lieu of facts. Until we know the facts, we have to make assumptions. This is probably the biggest one, I think, and I know there's discussion in the library.
Could you go back to that slide before just, in reading that, the budget drivers and assumptions, other revenue assumptions, is that tied to our revenue project? Or is that's
Yeah.
totally separate? Yeah, okay.
So these are the drivers and assumptions that we'll be using to help build the budget forecast, which will come back to your board next week.
I just wanted to clarify.
We're back in November with the fund forecast. I know there's discussion on the amount of tax being brought in this morning in the library. The NT is certifying the rules, I think, this week. So we'll have numbers to do our projections. But for me, as I look at it, significant factors are the base stable rate over time, relatively in quotes, stable, 4.5 to 4.25 to 4.5 on the base level. And then as businesses come and go, or additional data centers that may be higher or lower once the roles are certified. In our budget this year, we did know that the SIP was coming off the rolls. Our taxes would increase a little bit. Once we have those numbers certified, we'll have a better picture of where we land. The one thing I did note, as we're looking at some of the preliminary data, the data center investments that are done through enterprise zones make up a big chunk of the property tax base, or a lot of the higher dollar ones that add to above the level. And some of those buildings depreciate on a regular schedule, and some of the equipment depreciates much faster. And so the equipment might be moved out of state. And so there's not a lot of predictability in some of that investment. So as we look at the AV projections, I'll be considering how do we project that going forward in the future. And then, of course, the biggest, one of the big important things we have coming is the ballot measure in November with the public safety levy in the libraries. Another big cost is COLA. So any changes in COLA can be impactful. We use a 12-month rolling average on the CPI West Index of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And 25 rate, the rate there you can see this rolling average was 4.1%. This current fiscal year, FY26, it was 2.8%. We did first pickup in lieu of COLA for many of our employees. We are projected to go up to about 3-ish, 0.8, 3%. At the end of the year, we'll see how the year end comes out. But we also consider, those bargaining units, certain COLA specified, minimum, maximum, those things we take into account in the budget process. The other piece is that's going to be impactful on personnel costs is PERS rates. So the state has rates that are good for 2 years, so that operate on the biennium. So we won't have an increase in PERS rates this year, but for FY27-28, it may change. Just highlight a few notes here from the last Oregon Investment Council meeting. The stats that they provided on the rates of return. 3.2% in the second quarter. Year-to-date earnings outpaced the portfolio by nearly 1%, and the 5-year performance looks good. So that was some good news, I hope. But things can always change.
Rates next.
Yeah. Too.
Yes.
And the only thing with PERS that we can consider is PERS side accounts and how that might impact our rates. And that's something I might look at as much as. I'll turn to Debbie for expertise on our healthcare benefits.
I'm Debbie Watkins, the Benefits and Leave Manager for Washington County, and share a little bit of trend information with you. You'll see from the slide the chart and the trend that we have been seeing for our insurance renewal rates over time. And it has been a trend that we're trying to get in front of. When it first started here, it was during the pandemic, and it's actually flat in reduction in rates, and ever since then, it's been continuing to go up. I think there have been strains on the healthcare industry, and what we're seeing, you see it in the news, you see, labor negotiations, different things like that. They're cost drivers for them as well. So for us, what we are trying to do internally here is really look at how our employees are using the insurance. We don't get the specific detail of that, just trends. And our plans are rated fully based on the use of our employees, and so it's not coupled with any other providers or any other use. It is based on our trends. So our employees are using the insurance for a variety of reasons, and what we have seen over time is when we see rate increases like this, it is based on. We've been running around 100% use or a little bit over for our trends. And what that means is that the insurance carriers are generally losing money on us, which is why they see the higher rate the next year. So we're doing a variety of things to try to get in front of that. And what you'll see is we've done plan structure changes. We do that. We look at that in conjunction with the details from how our plans are being used. We have a great broker that we work with, and they work with actuaries and kind of look at what are the cost drivers. Over the last couple of years, pharmacy has been one of our largest cost drivers. And so we know that there are a lot of great medicines that are being developed right now, but they also are very expensive on the plans. And so as people use those, we obviously want them to have access to the care to get well, but that's the alternate, it's the cost of that. We continue to do employee education as much as we can. It's one of the things that I'm a huge proponent of is as employees understand more on their education, they can be better stewards of the dollars that they're spending, because it is a cost for us and for them. And so just trying to do whatever we can for the education for our staff. We have in 25, we did a variety of different changes. We had a 9.8% rate increase, but every time we have a rate increase, there's always been an associated plan change when we're looking at the 9.8 and the 14.8. So we are trying to be as creative as we can. We have a new plan year that's starting in January of 2026. So right now that projected rate increase is overall is going to be 14.8%. And that does include some plan changes as well. To get it to that.
In employee contribution, is that what you're talking about?
It's overall what the carriers invoice the county, and then the employees have a cost share as well on that. So the county sees a large increase and the employees see a corresponding increase. Yeah, so that is the trend. Now I am also monitoring some of the 2025 data, which will feed into our renewals as we keep going down the road. And we are starting to see some relief with one of our carriers, with Kaiser. We are starting to see some relief on that. So that's what we want to try to do, is keep making sure that the changes, if we have to do a change, that it is targeted and that is with the eye on reducing costs.
And just timing, we're getting close to open enrollment time. So this work is prior to open enrollment. We're talking about next.
We're talking now. We're evaluating for 2027. So 2026 is already big. That's the 14.8%. Yes. All right. And and the other thing that we are on a different budget cycle. We're obviously July through June, and our insurance renewals are January through December. So that also is one of those moving targets. We always have to understand that our insurance renewal covers 2 different budget years.
I would just point out the connection. You're not going to like to hear this in particular, but the whole discussion about tariffs on pharmaceuticals. I mean, pharmaceuticals for a health plan are typically it's as big of an expense as paying all the doctors.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes more. And so the tariff part of that, you all better be watching, because that will drive the insurance costs significantly. We don't manufacture as a country very many pharmaceuticals at all. In fact, it's very little. So be watching that.
Which is a good point. It's not just a story that the health insurance companies need to be bringing forward to Congress and the administration, but all of us
I mean, decisions we're making around ambulance affect this. I mean, this is all directly connected. So where's most of the pharmaceuticals? India, Southeast Asia, China.
Good point. Yeah, there are a variety of cost drivers. And just this year, we had one of our plans remove a couple of the pharmacy prescriptions from our formulary because there are biosimilars. And so they're constantly monitoring that as well to try to make sure that they're controlling costs. And we are putting a lot of pressure on them because these are hard costs to absorb. And so we do whatever we can in order to ask tough questions, get the data, really evaluate before we make changes.
As long as we're not becoming a difficult customer.
Yeah. We are, we have been with Kaiser and Providence for probably 20 years. So we've been consistently with them. Last year, as one of our cost containment strategies, we thought, okay, we really need to look and see what other carriers might offer for rates for us. And so we did a full competitive rate. We had some of the carriers that did not even want to bid on our plan because of the rates that we have and the use. And so they get the use data and then they do that. We did get 3 different bids to compare to the Providence, and we stayed with the Providence. 2 of the 3 were even higher than what the Providence renewal was. They have been really great partners, and we continue to work with them whenever they identify something. Let's just say one of the changes this year is for emergency room copays. And so we are trying to make changes on our side, but they're also proactively reaching out to employees who are users of the emergency room to try to figure out what those drivers are and see if they can maybe, it's a pandemic, a lot of people, believe it or not, still are having difficulty finding a primary care doctor. And so some of those things might be the result of how they're using the healthcare system.
So workforce challenge is so real.
Yeah. So it's there's no magic formula, but we're trying.
Curious. 2026 projection is 14.8%, but 2027 you have 12 to 20.
Well, we it's interesting because each of the carriers makes assumptions before they even apply how one of their plans is being used. And so right now, the assumptions for Kaiser Medical is 5.5 and Providence is 11.53. So that right there is their increased costs. They have ongoing administrative costs. So those are some of the assumptions that they build in. And then based on our plan and how we're using it, it's either going to be higher or lower than that. If it would be lower, it would have to be that we are not using the plan as much as we are.
And have an update based upon what Commissioner Snyder was just highlighting about pharmaceutical costs.
Exactly. That's and these trend factors are just a point in time. They do evaluate that based on labor costs and other trends.
Some of that takes a year to get sort of worked into the system. Like we might see the tariffs thing in 18 months. Or 20. Yeah.
So, carrier trends, obviously the increasing health costs, we talked a little bit about that. That does inform how we make plan change decisions. We review the claims data, we evaluate the trends, we really are digging in with the underwriters to try to understand that. We have a great broker who also is an excellent negotiator on our behalf, and so that we leverage that work with him and his team to get the best for the county. Plan changes. We have done some creative things that we've tried to really help contain costs, and part of this goes along with the education. So for instance, we've created the 2 new health plans that have a corresponding HRA VIVA contribution from the county. The idea with that is it's a higher deductible plan. People become more engaged in how they use it because when you get these plans cost the county significantly less. And so we share some of that savings with the employee. That becomes their money to keep. So then they are more engaged in how they want to spend that money. We always want people to get the care that they need. All of these plans have all of the, the preventative maintenance and all of the things that we want people to be having access to. But there are things that they can shop around. You can buy, your pharmacy from a variety of places. And so it's just trying to get them engaged. So we did that. We actually are getting more and more participation with that. So that feels good. And I think it's a heavier lift for our team in order to do the education piece, but it's really important. I think that's how we start driving some change. In 2024, we did a network change with Providence that was pretty significant savings. It saved about a 3 percentage point on our renewal that year to introduce a different, a little bit more restrictive network. And we did that on one of our plans, and it was the most well-used plan that we have. And so I think we're starting to see some savings from that. We've changed, copays, deductibles, out-of-pocket maximums, but we always have to look at those in a way where we are maintaining a positive insurance plan for employees, because this is one of the compensation and benefits are what can draw people to stay at the county. And so that's always in the back of our minds. We don't want to undermine the plans so much that they become not attractive. So we just, the education piece, one of the things that we're looking at this next year as well is increasing an opt-out stipend. And so right now, if employees are covered under another qualified plan at another, maybe their spouse or partner has a plan somewhere else, they can not take our insurance plan and get an opt-out stipend into an HRA VIBA. And so what we're doing this year is we're increasing that from 125 to 300 for next year. So if an employee doesn't take it, but if you look at the total dollar savings on that, it could be that that employee is not taking a $2,000 or $2,500 a month plan, and they're getting the 300 in exchange for that. It's a win-win, I think, on both sides. And then the other thing that we're hoping is that Workday is going to provide some visibility for our staff. I think there's an opportunity for us to really highlight the value of these benefits that we're providing for our staff and to understand in their total compensation package how that is going to really benefit us by being able to have them look at their compensation, but then the value of these dollars we're spending on benefits. And I think that will be so really positive.
So we'll see that too. I didn't imagine that I would be a Workday user.
Oh yeah, yes.
If I have a question about the opt-out stipend, that's 300 a month.
300 a month.
And that that I guess my real question there is how well are we educating our employees about that piece, because that has to go into their calculations when they're looking at insurance coverage. I would just make sure that
That's a change from this.
In 2026.
120.
Open enrollment.
Yes. Yeah.
125 to 300.
Yeah. It's enough to it's one of those things that in the benefits team, when we do open enrollment, our phones and emails are exactly. And that's what we want. We want people to pick the best plan for them. It's an opportunity for us because we do have some employees who both husband and wife or partner work at the county. And so it's an opportunity for us to say, do you both really need this plan that costs $2,500 a month on both sides? Maybe one takes it and the other one takes an opt-out in order to really, again, win-win. So there are
I want to emphasize that it doesn't have to be both working at the county.
No, it does not. Yes.
Yeah, it
It
could
can
be
anywhere. It can be anywhere. And the HRA VIBA is a really powerful tool, and that's one of the things that in the education piece is to help people understand, especially as people are entering into the workforce. This is a way to even start your retirement planning upfront. You're building this value upfront, and for a time later in your working career or in your life where you may need those funds. We don't know what insurance is going to be in 2 years.
What does high deductible plan look like?
So that's the high deductible health plan where it's a $2,000 deductible per person, and then we give a corresponding savings from the county into the employee's HRA VIBA. And it depends on which plan they select and how many people they have on their plan.
Do we have any of those that require no employee contribution then?
We do not. All of our plans have, they're either 5% or 10%. The county pays 90% of the insurance. Employees pay 10% with an opportunity to earn another 5% contribution by participating in our wellness platform.
Employers make that move, sort of say, here's a real, now I don't know that they had $2,000 deductibles.
Right.
They were higher,
Mhm.
but I was just curious.
Yeah.
There are so many variables,
Sure.
healthcare and economy and everything.
So can we go back one slide? I just want to, we spent quite a bit of time on insurance, and I want to just underscore how it relates a bit further to our budget drivers. So just really appreciate Debbie Watkins lifting up the value that this is for employees. I think she also, through her presentation, spoke to the experience that the benefits and leave team tries to have with individual employees. So the plan cost for county for calendar year 2026 is estimated a total of $57 million. So that is 35 million for Providence and 17 million for Kaiser. So I just want to put those percentages you saw in the last. Yep, total plan costs for the calendar year. So I'm using calendar year because that's the renewal period, is 57 million. That is Providence 35 million and Kaiser 17 million.
Doesn't equal 57.
I have one wrong number for. Debbie, correct me.
Well, and I'm wondering if the 57 million includes the vision and dental.
Yes.
Those
Yep.
are a lot smaller portions. The largest is Providence.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thanks, Debbie.
So your analysis is miscellaneous 5 million.
Yeah.
Then we
Yeah,
Yep.
it's the other ones. They're important benefits as well.
They can't call that a rounding error.
Yeah, well, somebody who had their prescription changed twice this year. 1 year. 6 months.
All right, I'm gonna bring us home here on the other assumptions, just talking about the revenue.
Oh, wait, sorry. I'm going to go back to that slide. Recognition moment. That's
Yeah.
what I thought you were taking us back to. Healthiest employers of Oregon. Thank you to you and your team for that.
We actually
That's all.
have a new, we're working on getting the badge for the 2025. We were also in 2025.
So what is that based on?
We submit data to be considered for a healthiest employer, and it's a multi-page document of kind of highlighting some of our plans, what we're doing internally to support our employees, wellness, and they evaluate that. And then there's different categories. We're in a category of based on size, number of employees. And, we're second again this year. I want to try to get to first, but first is a county who has a on-site wellness or health clinic. So we're trying to figure out how we can help them to get to number one. I'm a little competitive, but yes, we do put a lot of emphasis because they go hand in hand. Employee wellness really does impact some of our employee the insurance rates, so they really are important.
Thank you. Just didn't want that to go by.
Oh, that's good.
Other assumptions.
Other assumptions. So for the general fund revenue streams, these top 4 here are ones that come in the general fund, and just want to touch on those. The SIP program, we know the one tranche of Intel had dropped off, and so we have 2 additional tranches, relatively stable through FY33 when the second one would drop off. Gain share has been relatively stable. It's been extended to 2030. Transient lodging tax, that remains flat and maybe slightly less than flat. We're having to watch that as we go through the year. And then in the report from the state, it indicated that the video lottery sales slowed in recent quarters. I believe we get distributed about 2.5% of the sales come to the counties on a prorated basis.
I think the just from the indicators we have at Explore 12 Valley, I think we would tell you that on the leading indicators is going down.
Yeah.
Especially, particularly in Washington County.
That's because the
Just stuff like
reduced corporate travel.
yes,
Right.
But and sticking with that, if I remember the allocation formula, when TLT overall goes down, everybody shares in the smaller number, right?
Right.
Except for Explorer 12 Valley, didn't we contractually
We did
guarantee them a number?
through an IGA. I think we have a minimum. We had a maximum. Let's look back at it. But we do have controls on that.
Yeah, so they would suffer less. In a decrease.
Yeah. I'll go back and look at that. Verify.
They also have increased responsibilities.
That's true. Crank it up.
and they're being funded out of the part that can't be used for just any.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the other
Yes.
factor. It's
Right,
not
good
like
point.
revenue, other purposes.
That the coastal counties, though, are continuing to push for a different percentage going into the future. So that also would impact that.
That's a good conversation here, but,
We should be aware of that, yes.
and we should be probably supporting it.
On the expenditure side, so we look at a 10-year history trend on the materials and services of our assumptions as we work through the budget process. And of course, look at the line items of larger contracts, things coming up for RFP or out for solicitation, take those into account. As far as reductions we took last year and previous years, we're assuming we're not reinstating those reductions, with the exception of the sheriff's office, who has been working hard on recruiting staff.
Can I just add, just if you may recall, a moment in the budget, there were 26 sheriff's office positions that were eliminated. It was very clear in budget presentations as well as the document that once we get to a fill rate, the sheriff would be coming back and having a conversation with CAO, finance, and then it would go to your board for reinstatement of those positions. They are getting close to their fill rate, which is great news. And that does mean that I believe in this fiscal year, we will be faced with decisions on should we fill some of these positions. That does not mean that all those positions get automatically added into the budget for this year, but we want to be clear on this slide that those positions, it was made clear that they would be a discussion for reinstatement.
I also want to add to that there's balance in the overtime costs that we've been experiencing as well.
Last bullet there, just our contingency reserve policy, just ensuring that we meet our policy and make sure we maintain our solid credit rating and have a good contingency for the uncertainty that we certainly have upon us in the years ahead. It's over to you.
So the slide in front of you is the first of two with the draft budget calendar. I'm just going to verbally walk through it so you all can, the board can ask questions as we work through this. So, and I am going to start with today because we have some former. So, October 2nd, we have the roundtable. We're talking about today, the forecast levers, and first look at the budget calendar on November 6th. We have the scheduled roundtable for the budget, which will be the financial focus. I will note that on this calendar, it does not have the October 30th roundtable in here. Then in November, during the board regular session, Mr. Steyer and team will come forward with investment policy and cash management on the consent calendar. That will be coming also to the board in work session, though, prior to.
On October 21st, we'll come
Yep.
forward on the investment policy.
Then December 4th, we have another roundtable, and that is with the goal of the board affirming the budget principles and priorities. Internally, work is December 8th, what is where we have budget kickoff for the staff. That's when the budget system is opened, and we provide budget guidance and access on opportunity initiative. So this was formerly known as the Equity Budget Lens. Then in December, end of December, which we are working on scheduling, is work session and board meeting with a special supplemental budget. This is the chart of accounts and readapting the budget because we're moving to a new system. And then 8th, we'll continue to have a fiscal forecast, and this is where we'll be bringing to your board and roundtable financial policies. January, ACFR and PAFR. February, budget topic at roundtable. Continuation of potential share service discussion, given where we're at with the budget process. Internally, what happens in February is departments present their budgets for consideration by CAO. We move to the next slide. In March, we go into decision making, which is part of how we balance the budget. March 5th, budget potential roundtable topics. So putting a placeholder here if they're depending on what the uncertainty that you're facing. I'm going to come back to the greens on the next slide where there's questions for the board because this is budget committee related. So March 16th is budget committee update. So this is an information session and then the orientation. We received good feedback from the budget committee members of appreciation the information session, where have we been, and really it's a synopsis of all the discussions your board would have up to that date.
We would anticipate both to be virtual or in person this time, or you
haven't got open to feedback. I would just say my own personal observation, the interaction in person is helpful, especially with new committee members, before you sit at a table together and listen to budget. So that would be my suggestion. April 27th, the proposed budget is posted, released. Budget books are distributed on that date too. It will be a smooth sailing this year with the new system. I'm just going to say that out loud to manifest that.
Knock on wood.
I'm just manifesting positivity right now. And then the budget committee meeting, and this is just where the budget message is provided and you'll receive the budget books. We have on May 6th, the first round of questions are submitted to staff. These are questions from budget committee members. We also incorporate questions that may come through other means. On May 11th, budget committee question and answers are available. This is round 1 of question and answers. On the 12th, we have potential budget committee meeting number 2, special district specific presentations. And I'll get into the option 1 and 2 a bit more in the next slide where you can see that. Then on the 14th and 15th, we're in budget meetings for Service District for Lighting 1 and general budget. And then on the 15th, we would be asking for the second round of questions submitted to staff. So this is questions that you may have while you're doing your homework or asked during the budget committee presentation. Then on the 18th, the budget committee question and answers will be available. So that's round 2. On the 20th, this is the option that we'll talk about in next slide. The county and special district for lighting budget presentations. This is the holdover time that we use because sometimes we don't know that if your committees will need more time or not. Then we go into June for the public hearings and adoption. I will note what's new as a reminder this year. You will be adopting financial policies as part of your budget, and that will become an annual process so that we try to keep our financial policies up to date continuously. I'm looking forward to that, Mr. Steyer. Yeah. And then we come to the next fiscal year. So talking a bit more about, next slide, please. Key questions for the board today, and this was, I'll take you back to last roundtable. This was feedback from the budget committees, specifically the special districts, that it was challenging to hear the budget presentation and then vote on the budget that evening. So option one is an evening meeting on May 12th. Host the evening budget presentation on May 12th for the special districts. Call back the committee members for deliberation and vote on the 20th. The opportunity, this allows each of the committee members time to reflect, really acts on the feedback that we receive from some committee members. I will just note that this would be another meeting for staff, so it is staff time. Budget committee members who have not had to come to 2 meetings in the past may think that this is a drawback, and it would be a longer day for you all as well. So then option two, keep the same schedule as was done in fiscal year 26 and schedule in a set reflection time at breaks. So this would allow each committee member to reflect, formulate questions, confer, make amendments if they wanted to make amendments. This would be a smaller lift for staff, slightly longer day for budget committee members of having to be on site, and a moderately longer day for you all. So question for the board is, of these two options, which would you prefer, or is there another option that we haven't considered? The staff recommendation would to minimize the lift for staff, so that would be option two. However, we are open to either option.
In reading the options, I like option 2 first, and we can see how it works, and then we reserve the opportunity to go to option 1 if it doesn't meet the needs. That's how I look at this.
I'd like to first back myself up a little bit and remind myself what we're talking about is the URMD district, the ESPD, so that's one combined committee, and North Bethany Service District for roads. And given that, I agree with you in trying option 2. I was trending towards option 1 originally, but with the reminder of who we're talking about.
So we would still be trying to do something to respond to their feedback with a reflection time. But it would be the same day.
And it would it be daytime or evening with option 2?
We haven't got to that level of detail, so we can take your feedback on that as well.
Well, what I recall is, from my standpoint, URMD and ESPD tend to be pretty specific, and North Bethany Service District for roads as well. What was, I think, different this year is they didn't have a subcommittee meeting this past year on North Bethany. So that's usually where a lot of really detailed questions are asked. I think there were some things learned from that. So I think I stick with option 2 for that. And I'm internalizing that for the main budget committee, that there's time between the 15th and the 20th. I need to ask this as a question because it's intended as a question. And I can hold my question if you want me to, but I'm thinking about how it seems to me like members of the total budget committee wanted the presentations. We won't have had the round 2 answers until the 18th. And so on the 20th, making sure that there's enough time for remaining questions and for discussion of amendments. I think that could work if that's what's in the thinking. But I just to affirm that.
Yes, and the goal based on feedback was also for you to have the answers to the round 2 before you got to the 20th, because that was challenging. Yeah, okay, for you.
I would want to clarify on option 2 that I don't think it would be acceptable to have a 20 or 30-minute break. I think people need an actual opportunity to reflect. And so I don't know exactly what's envisioned here, but I would just want to clarify. It's not that kind of. It's something more substantial.
Also chime in to say, I hear you about the low lift, the option 2 is a small lift for staff. However, my concern is, are we gonna have a rushed day? Or should we build into option 1 already so that we have that hold? Because if the day is gonna get longer, I just don't see, I just have a process question of like, I want to see the agenda, how the breakdown is happening and how the reflection time is built into that agenda for that day so that it's meaningful for everyone, including ourselves. So I don't know how long that day is going to be. 8 hours, 10 hours, how do we plan this?
I haven't heard from all the commissioners, but given what I've heard so far, would it be appropriate that staff work on option 2 and come back with a more detailed schedule next month for your board to approve? Just what would that day look like?
So what we're talking about is on Tuesday, May 12th, it's just an ordinary board work session and business day. And last year, they kept that day as light as they possibly could in terms of matters. So then option 1 is, in addition to whatever we have for board work session and business meetings and exec sessions that day, we would have those meetings would end, and then we would reconvene in an evening meeting, like 6 p.m. So you'd have time for a dinner break. And then we would have the special district budget committee meeting the night of the 12th. And thinking back to this last year on URMD, ESPD, and North Bethany, they were just questions of clarification. Right? And so there weren't special amendments on service districts. So that's where I'm comfortable with, because they will have gotten the budget on the 27th, so they can submit their questions, right? And for each of those districts, I mean, hopefully we'll have some more continuity with people who are on that budget committee meeting. So I think it'll go okay based on past practice. It's the main budget where we needed more time with the final set of questions, which the schedule already, this proposed schedule accommodates that need. And people time to have that information, and we've talked about the improvements on the amendments. So narrowing it back down to just uh, the option 1 versus option 2 slide. The only difference is option 1 has clarity. Can we change the slide, please? Option 1 has the clarity that there will be a meeting that night and then come back on the 20th. Whereas option 2 will have the meeting time still to be set, but worst case, it would be at night. And we would go through the information, finalize, that everybody has their questions answered, and then approve those budgets that evening as well. If it is worst case, as I said, is everybody clear on that?
I think so. I'm just gonna reflect back and say the problem we're solving is some of the committee members, and I remember specifically one of that committee member being on the ESPT. I don't remember what other budget was, but specifically reflecting on that and not having enough time. I'm not trying to create more work for staff, but I would like to see how that solves that problem of not having time from the time you're reacting to the information to have a robust dialogue and then move into the decision. So if that solves in the previous slides of some of the other dates, then I feel comfortable. But I do want us to change from past practices because I think we've heard that loud and clear that it's not working.
Well, I think another thing that is a learning for me is that if people want to serve on the URMD ESPD budget based upon their interest in one or more of those topics, they really should also be attending the ESPD advisory committee meetings.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Because no, their work on the ESPD is just for how those levy dollars are spent. And it's not how is everything being done from the sheriff's office for full patrol. And so I think that is something that was learned this last year. And
Yeah, Jen, to your point, we do see crossover between the budget and the DAC.
Yep.
So there was a level of awareness in our budget committee.
I do think that's a good point to ask those members who volunteer to also suggest them to attend those or even just review some of the videos. Yeah, just to close that gap if there is a gap in their knowledge. But yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing option 2. We need to work on the full detailed schedule of all this. Yep. Working through the process. Next slide. And so this is just a reminder where we will be. And based on your discussion, I want to just repeat again, this doesn't have the October 30th date on here. And that concludes our presentation for the roundtable. Happy to answer any questions from the board.
I have one. Yes. What would it take for us? Budget?
this confirmed for me that would be next to impossible.
Well, I'd like to hear that just because I feel like we are on the budget treadmill, and I know the staff exponentially feels that. And so here it is. We just came out of a fairly rigorous budget cycle, and it's October 1st, 2nd, and we're talking about the budget schedule again. And I feel badly for the staff because they're going, how do I get out of this new loop? But and so I just, not for today, but I'd like.
Well, I'll answer it right now. So, when I was with Mankato in Minnesota, we transitioned to a 2-year budget, and it was glorious. It was glorious, and we had stable revenues.
I was gonna, yeah.
So
Cities
We have stable revenues, just not enough.
Yeah, but the learning is
they are not stable right now, Jerry.
Layers of
So,
cities don't rely upon state and federal resources to the degree that counties do.
so I think it is something we could come back to and discuss in the future. I think some of the layers that we need to think about as a county is cycle of the state budget, state contracting, how that could impact. It is something to think about because it is a lot of, I'll call it inertia, both for the board and also staff. But I do not think that we are at that point right now. However, we can keep the conversation open because I would like to go to that.
Are there other counties around the state? I don't know that are on 2-year cycle.
We can add.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Commissioner Willie, for what it's worth, I literally had the exact same conversation with Tanya in the last 2 weeks, actually in the last and recognizing that now is probably not the time. But
Well, we have to sync it up probably with the state's 2-year budget cycle and a lot of stuff in there. But again, just as putting myself in the position of a director and the amount of time that I think we ask them to spend annually on their budgets, it'd be a heck of a lot easier to sit down and say, I'm going to look at a 2-year snapshot, knowing that there's going to be flexibility maybe as we move through this 2 years, but I'm going to put together a 2-year scenario and then I'm done and I get next year off to do actual work. So that's just my thoughts on it. There could be a lot of flaws there.
Seeing sunshine and rainbows right now.
a long
Yep. Yep.
Bringing it up, but I had that thought myself.
Bet you did.
From a workload, I couldn't agree with you more.
We get through workday, we'll have smooth sailing rest.
Okay, it's 12:20 now. We'll have a lunch break, and would you like to return at 1:30 or at 1:20?
120, we only need an hour.
You know, whatever that thread was, it just became public record.
Yep. What do you want?
Here.
Let's
What
do
is
120 then.
120. Great.
Nice job.
Very nice job.